Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at JustinoTweets and at SheKnowsArsenal. Welcome to another episode. On today's show, we're going to be going through just a couple of things. Again, there's not much out there. We're beyond the transfer window. We're waiting on games to start. The big North London Derby is coming this weekend. And so because I'm going to do a preview on Friday, I don't necessarily want to burn that too early. So we're going to just talk about what I've seen on Twitter about Arsenal, like on the exterior of the stuff for the North London Derby. So, yeah, we're going to go through the injury updates. There's been some, so we'll talk about that as well as Balogun'S future, which has been spoken about today, and Douglas Luiz potentially coming in January. So, if you guys can, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Make sure the channel continues to grow. Thank you. Let me just fix my mic really quick. Yeah, that's better. That's better. And you guys let me know how you guys are feeling. What have you guys done today? Are you missing the Arsenal? Are you ready to get to the weekend? For me, like when there's no Premier League, I just feel lost in life. Like I just don't I'm like, what why am I here? Why do I exist? You guys know how I feel about Arsenal and football in general. So yeah, I am ready for the weekend for sure. It's odd. It's not odd, but whenever we're the first game, it's kind of like a good and a bad thing because if you're the first game and you win, then you get to like enjoy the rest of the weekend. There's tons of 3 o'clock games, and then there's the Manchester Derby on Sunday. So that's always hold on. What are they saying? What is this? Anyways, so there's so much football on, but if we don't win, I'm going to be very upset. And whenever Arsenal don't win, I'm just not a nice person to be around. I can't recover. It's like I just wanna go to sleep and get to the next game, and so, yeah, it would be really great if we can win so we can enjoy the rest of the football. I almost wish that we were the Sunday game, so that we could enjoy everything else, and then whatever happens, happens, and then we could just rush on to the next week, but that's just not how it goes, and, I mean, at least, like, the international football is done. I have to be honest, like, I mean, nobody really likes international break. I don't think any of us love it, but the football was on like another level of poor, during this international break. I don't know if you guys watched Portugal and Spain yesterday, but those two teams were looking rank, so rank. And so at least we know that that's over and we can once we get beyond this, it's going to be a game every 3 days, so there'll always be an opportunity for Arsenal to turn the page and either continue on a good run or start a new run over, so that's the good thing about having these 9 games in a row, 3 days apart, 4 days apart, whatever. But yeah, we're the first game 12:30 on a Saturday at the Emirates, so don't ruin my weekend, Arsenal. Make sure you win. um Ash says international football has the worst managers, hence the worst footballing styles. Billy Boy says, I like to get the win early and enjoy the weekend. Yep. Don One says, come on, you Gunners. Elliot Robert says, if it's like the summer without the news and a little break. Hi Gamer says, I'm feeling irie, taking a break and having a meal. Amira says, good morning, afternoon, evening, Jess and chat. Arsenal could play a game every 3 days and it still won't be soon enough for me. Denver says, hey, Jess, how are you? I'm good. Thank you for asking. Says, looking forward to the North London Derby. Let's just go and win it. Billy Boy saying, I'm dying for my Arsenal fix. DJ Oni is saying, Jess, I'm watching you and the women's game at the same time. How do I concentrate? Well, I mean, you really could just like put me on the volume and listen while, you watch. So, yeah. So you can make sure that you have your eyes on the women's game. It's a very important game for them today, obviously, because they drew that or yeah, they drew the first game against Ajax, so they definitely have to put in a performance today. Make sure you guys, again, are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And so let's go ahead and get into these injury updates. I think going into the North London Derby, going into this 9 games streak of games, whatever you want to call it, 9 games in 30 days. we need as many players as possible. So injury updates are something that I think Arsenal fans are going to be very interested in to see who's available and who is not. So this is coming from Kaya. Kaya was saying that Arsenal have received positive news on Kieran Tierney's fitness ahead of the North London derby with Tottenham on Saturday and remain hopeful that Partey, Zinchenko, and Tamiyasu could all be available. That's coming from Football London via Kaya. And yeah, it said hopeful, so that doesn't guarantee anything. But, looking at Tamiyasu, he didn't look injured to me. Like, I know, like, what do I know? But when he played against the US, he didn't look like he got any sort of injuries. So it's kind of like, okay, you should be fine. Zinchenko, you've been sitting around for 2 weeks. Like, I need you to be fit. And I think the biggest one is Thomas Partey because nobody really knows what the extent of whatever injury he got with Ghana is. He was warming up, he felt something, and what it reads like to me is that he was smart and didn't wanna risk it and decided not to play against Brazil and just went back home, and the fact that they're hopeful, I think, means that the scans didn't show anything, and so, yeah, I think it's one of those where we're just gonna have to wait and see if he's on the team sheet going into that game, but it's for me, it feels okay. Like, it feels like we're fine, like, it doesn't feel like there's anything looming on the horizon in terms of that. And we need everybody that we can possibly have available, even the likes of Reece Nelson and Cedric, and I know that may sound weird, especially because you guys know I'm not a big Cedric person, but the more players we have, the better, the more competition we have, the better, especially for Europa League games, like the likes of Reece Nelson and Cedric, I do think could be good for us in those games to make sure that, like, an example of that would be instead of Tamiyasu playing right back, let Cedric play right back and let Tamiyasu play left-sided center back to allow Gabriel to get some rest. So that's, because you also want Ben White to get rest and Saliba too. So yeah, I think having as many players as possible that are fit and ready to go is obviously what we're looking forward to. This is coming from Goal. I think this was written by Charles Watts. Says Arsenal are currently without some key players due to injury, but they're on the way back after a relatively quiet start to the season. In the medical room, Arsenal have run into some injury problems in recent weeks. First, it was Thomas Partey who was sidelined, and Mohamed El Neni, leaving Mikel short in the middle of the park. Martin Odegaard, Zinchenko, and Cedric have also had issues with all three players having to sit out. Blah blah blah. Um, so with Odegaard, obviously, like, he's fine, like, he's gonna be ready, and so, that's basically what this report says, which is Zinchenko. Arsenal are hopeful that Zinchenko will be in contention for the North London derby against Spurs. Um, El Neni is out for a long time, so we could just shelve him. With Emil Smith Rowe, this says it remains unclear, but Smith Rowe is a doubt for Arsenal's game against Tottenham. We talked about that the other day. Cedric is not expected to be fit for the North London derby. The earliest he could potentially return will be to face Bodo Glimt on October the 6th. And Reece Nelson, providing he suffers no setbacks, Nelson should be available for the Tottenham game on October 1st. Partey, providing Partey passes a fitness test later in the week, he should be able to face Spurs on October 1st. So again, it's Wednesday. We still have Thursday and Friday to get through, but that seems pretty positive. It's not like for sure he's going to be out. Tierney, um, early return, purely precautionary due to head injury. He should be available. So yeah, like I mean, if you read off that list, we had quite a bit of injury situations going on during this international break. So it is nice to hear that we'll have as close to a full strength as I think we could expect against Spurs at the weekend. Ayanle says Partey is the most important player in the team. Next is Jesus. The rest we can cope. If he isn't available this North London derby, I am not holding my breath. Well, it's for me, it really just depends. Like, I know we're not high on Sambi at the moment, especially because the last significant game that he played, we lost. Um, But, at home, being a little bit smarter, taking advantage of our chances, you might be able to get by with Sambi, but we haven't won a big game with him in the team, So I get where you're going with that. I think a lot of people feel the same. Like, obviously, I prefer Thomas Partey there. I just think in general, like, even when he's not playing well, I don't think that he's been at his sparkling best since the season has started. It's just we're in a different place now where we have so many better players that we don't have to rely on him so heavily. But just his presence alone, I think, makes the opposition feel differently about us, play differently against us. And with Sambi, I think he's automatically looked at as a weakness. So, yeah, of course, I would prefer Thomas Partey, but I don't think it's like 100% a loss if he's not there, but I think he will play. Nav R says, don't think we will be able to get by with Zambia against Tottenham or a Big Six team. I think we can if a lot of things go in our direction. But again, I'd prefer Thomas Partey. But like when I think about the Man United game, even though I think Sambi had some culpability for the goals, I also just think if we had been more clinical in the box, we probably would have been fine. And when you don't finish your chances and then you play games in the margins, all it takes is Sambi to jump out of his hole one time and then boom, you're down 2 not 2 nil or 2-1 or whatever. So, yeah, I think that game was still on the margins. You guys know how I feel about that game. It was more of a 2-2 than a 3-1. But I more looked at the fact that we were not potent in the final third more than anything else because they were always gonna get chances, but with the amount of touches that we had in their box, it was actually criminal that we didn't have more than 1 goal. But I hear what you're saying, like, a lot of things would have to go in our direction. But yeah, Sambi, I don't want him to play against, Spurs, but it is if he has to, then he has to. Saksham says, "Hello, Jess, love your content. Hope we do not have to play Lakanga." I think most of us are thinking that. Like, let's we don't want him there. I don't think he'll be there, but I don't think it's a certain loss. So that's pretty much it with the injury updates. We'll see how things go, but it's Wednesday and it looks like mostly everybody will be available except for Smith Rowe. So that's a good sign. There's 105 of you guys in here. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Um, Don One and Clucking Bell in the chat, just going at each other as usual. I love this chat. Just as long as you guys are being nice and you guys are both like doing it, whatever. Alistair Ben says Sambi was not that bad against Man U, and I think Spurs midfield is as strong as Man U's. I actually think um it's tough because you know I think Bruno Fernandes is a very good player, and Ericsson is clearly quality. It was just McTominay. I always say his name wrong, but Scott. Um, that wasn't a bad midfield that they had. Like, Spurs midfield is functional. Man United's midfield has quality. So maybe it's about even, but I don't see them passing through us these perfect balls in between the lines and things like that. I just more see they'll see the gap and maybe they'll kick it over the top. Or Hoiberg has actually had quite a few through balls, but again, it's nowhere near the same quality as Eriksen and Bruno Fernandes. I think their midfield is just more functional and serves a purpose. But I would actually say, like, I think Man United's midfield, in terms of people and what they bring to the table, has more quality than Spurs. But, that's just my take on it. Um, so, yeah, let's move forward. And because you guys we're gonna do, like, a full, like, Spurs preview on Friday, so I don't really wanna burn through that now. But yeah, make sure you guys are liking the video, subscribing to the channel. The next thing that I want to, go over is the Balogun stuff. Balogun is playing really well, in France. Let's look at the stats really quick. I'm so happy for him because I mean, he's a player that, like, do you guys remember when like, I was a part of the fan base that felt this way, is that think back to this time where nobody was really feeling Eddie Nketiah, and Balogun was looked at as, like, the better player. Do you guys remember that? And, I think it was against Sunderland, Balogun started, and he really struggled playing against, like, grown-ups. I think it was after he was in the under 23s, I think, and that viral video went through of him, like, doing the little tricks and all that kinda stuff. Then he played against Sunderland and did nothing, and Eddie Nketiah came in and scored a hat trick and made it look easy, and I think for me, that showed 1, that I was 100% wrong about where those 2 players were in their development because up until that point, I was basically like, move Eddie on and move Balogun into his spot. And so, things have really changed, especially because Eddie is definitely further along in his development than Balogun. But nevertheless, Balogun is a very, very talented player and will be really beneficial to us in the future. And so, he did the half season loan at Middlesbrough and he played 18 matches and scored 3 goals and had 3 assists. That's not bad. Now he's at Rem. If I'm getting that wrong, I'm so sorry. But Rem, and in 8 matches, he has 5 goals and 1 assist. That's really, really good for somebody that this is like their first full season playing with adults, and I don't really think he struggled at Middlesbrough. I just think like, it's your first time, so you're kind of like trying to figure things out. And so, there was a little blurb on him today that came from Junes Photo. Oh my gosh, that's I don't know, whatever, that said Mikel Arteta would like Balogun to extend his contract at Arsenal and then be loaned out for an extra season at Rem with the extension by a season of the loan currently being studied should Rem avoid relegation this season. And so let's look at Balogun's contract. Let's see. Is it gonna pop up? Profile. So his contract does expire, um, what's it say? His contract expires in, June 30th, 2025. So, he has still, like, 2 years left on his deal in this summer. So they wanna extend it further, which would probably be a good idea. But I wanna ask you guys, what do you think Balogun's future is at Arsenal? What do you it's often players go away and we forget about them, but with the players that we have coming through, you know, some of them will be able to take these squad positions probably sooner rather than later because they have went on these loans. Balogun, Brooke Norton-Cuffy, Patino, and Austin Trusty are 3 that I've been looking at, like, very closely, like, "Okay, what positions could you fill, for us so that we don't have to spend the money?" And it's hard to see it now because they're so raw and so young, but with real experience behind them that could accelerate that for them. And so those 4 players in particular, Balogun being really quite top of the list. Um, what do you guys think his future is at Arsenal? Do you think it's at Arsenal? Do you think Eddie's blocking his path? Do you think because he has a similar profile to that of like Jesus and Kedia, meaning he's not a tall physical striker that maybe we need something different. Do you think that he'll maybe be searching for something a little bit more, substantial in terms of playing time? What do you guys think? Because Balogun, I think, is so, so talented that he may not want to sit our bench, because I don't see him getting in the team and ahead of the players that we have now. But in the next 2 seasons, who knows what's gonna be happening? So it'd be interesting to know what you guys think. But again, like Austin Trusty, left-sided, um, left center back that's doing really well at Birmingham. What can he do? Brooke Norton-Cuffy, he's a different type of right back than what we have. What can he do? Patino looking great what can he do? These players are gonna be really good for us in the future because and it's a part of our academy, so or the ethos of the club is using the academy, so the idea that these players are not gonna be looked at to make it into the first team, I think, would be silly to think so. I'm thinking those players they're definitely looking at. Joanne says, "I think the club have already hung their hat on Eddie." What does hung their hat mean? Like, what does that mean? Does that mean they've already given up? Like, what does that mean? I don't understand that phrase. Could you let me know what that means? Michael says, "I honestly see him being a mid-table legend in the future, so somebody like a Zaha." Um, Denver says, "Balogun is a great asset to have. Say it doesn't work, we can make good money on him. It's still a win-win." Um, Nashville hung their hat means he is their guy. Oh, okay. Okay. That's yeah. I mean, I feel like they're putting effort into him becoming something. Oh my god, I forgot all about Nuno, but I think Nuno's gonna get sold. But yeah, nevertheless, Nuno's out there as well. But Eddie, not Eddie, Balogun is different than Eddie. They're 2 different players. They just both of them are not very tall, so they don't add that tall physical striker profile that I think at some point we'll probably want. But they're 2 completely different players that do different things, but they're both really talented. But as long as Eddie's there, I don't really see a spot for Balogun, like, in the short term, but it depends on what happens with Eddie. Because I'm sure at some point, if he continues to play well, one of the Crystal Palaces or the Brightons or they're gonna come knocking, and hopefully we can get a good chunk, 30 million or so for Eddie and Nketiah in the future. Nashville Gunner says Nuno is on loan to get his value up. He is getting sold. I think so as well. Alistair Ben says, let's hope Balogun has good people telling him he does not need to rush to be a first team in the first team, choose and learn his trade. Yeah, the people in his ear are gonna be really, really important. Stefan says, "Eddie, I think, has a better clinical edge." The Truth Says Free says, "Eddie is so athletic, can he finish?" Um, well, he needs more than 17-minute cameos. The thing I mean, it's hard because when Eddie was playing more minutes, obviously, he was he was scoring more frequently. That makes so much sense, because now, he can get his run of games and he can get settled in. But when you're coming off of the bench and it's sporadic, it's more difficult. But he's not going to get 17-minute cameos. I think he's going to be the striker of the Europa League group stages and moving forward so that we can subsidize Gabriel Jesus's minutes and keep him fresh. So Eddie will have a chance to really show what he's about. He may not be in the Premier League, but it will definitely be in the Europa League. That's why I'm glad we're in the competition because it's an opportunity to keep those boys fresh. Diallo says Nuno has no future at Arsenal with Arteta in charge. He doesn't trust him at all. I think those comments that he made, if maybe they were taken out of context or lost in translation, but they look like the type of comments that get put you on the Guendouzi route and not the Saliba route. um, Ash says Eddie has scored 20 goals in his last 40 starts. He's doing the job. Amira says, do you wish Balogun played for the US instead? Watch their game against Japan. You guys could do with someone like him. Well, I think he's all but chosen the US. I read something not too long ago that said that, he chose the US. And so, because he could have chosen England or Nigeria, I think as well. So we have to see what happens and if he gets called up at some point. But yeah, I mean, we need a striker 100%. Like we don't have one. So if it was Balogun, that would be great. We just have to see what happens with that. But yeah, I think there was an article out there that said that he chose the US. So we'll see what happens. Seksham says Eddie needs to improve his finishing. That's the only way he can challenge Jesus, provided he gets less time. Um, let's see. Navar says Nuno equals chat shit gets sold. 100%. 100%. iGamer says keep them boys sharp with the Europa League. So yeah, I mean Balogun is an interesting one. I do think that, you know, it would be so smart, I think, for Arsenal to build Eddie up, and then if there was a because we've given him the extension to be able to sell him on, if there was a team that would be interested in him, and then bringing Balogun through, or if Eddie stays, because if Eddie stays, Gabriel Jesus is 25. The next time he moves clubs, if he does move clubs, I don't think will be within the next 3 years or so. So there's a little bit of like some traffic there for Balogun to get through. So I do think somebody would have to move on for him to feel like he's going to get some decent minutes. But he's only 21, so, but I'm really happy for him. 5 goals and 1 assist and 8 appearances is really, really good for somebody who just, moved over there not too long ago. I get that the French league is not great, but I'd be more concerned if he had like no goals, but if he stays there for another season, who knows what'll happen, but he also spoke about Arteta wanting him to mature as a man and like, those extra things that Arteta always talks about, the soft factors about, becoming a good person and all that kind of stuff and making sure that he's a well-rounded individual. And I thought that that was really interesting. And like he said that when he got to France and he started living out there on his own, he realized what Arteta was talking about, and so, I thought that that was just good character building and interesting, that Arteta really cares about the person that they're becoming. So yeah, Eddie Nketiah is doing his thing. He'll be able to show what his quality looks like in the Europa League, while Balogun is doing his thing out in France. If he decides to stay another season, should Rem stay in League then good for him. I think 2.5 seasons out on loan, then we get to really see, what he's about. There's 150 of you guys in here like the video, subscribe to the channel. Boss Mode says, good channel, you get my sub. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Nashville Gunner says Eddie is not going to want to be a second option for multiple seasons. Exactly. I think, you know, somebody will be interested in him, and so we'll have to make a decision. I hope we make the right one. The True Sets Free says watching Spurs. Thank you so much for your super chat, by the way. Says watching Spurs is like when you go to the dentist for the first time and hear the drill and the screams in the waiting room. It's a tough watch. I mean, I don't know. Some Spurs fans say that as long as they're winning, they don't care, so fair enough. Let's see. Adini Adini says Nketiah would come good in my opinion. Tough to compete with Abba and Lacazette when you're developing. Yeah, I mean, it is tough for him, but he has Jesus in front of him. So it'll be interesting to see what that looks like and could he really push Gabriel Jesus? I think he should be. Gabriel Jesus obviously is on a different level than Eddie, but I expect Eddie to push him, and not just be there, if that makes sense. So make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And yep, getting close to 1,300 or sorry, 13,000 subscribers. My next goal is obviously like 20K or something like that. But hopefully we can get there maybe by the end of the season. That might be too much, but we'll see where we're at. We'll see where we're at. Denver says, Jess, we are forgetting that Eddie can come in if Saka is out due to suspension or injury, as Jesus will move to right wing. This is true. We have a very fluid front three that, really consists of our system is fluid front three, but we have like 5 or 6 players that can play across that front three, which is great. I really like that. Now, oh, and I guess, like, my ending thought on the Balogun thing is that I do think he has a future at Arsenal. I think Eddie if I had to guess, it's not an opinion that I'm gonna hold tightly or anything like that, but, what I would anticipate would happen is that somebody would come in for Eddie, and Eddie would move on, and Balogun would move into his spot. That's what I think will happen. Um, so yeah. Now, the last thing that I wanna kinda talk about is Douglas Luiz. And this is coming from Mark Irwin from The Sun. Now, I know you guys are going to be like, Jess, The Sun, it's shit. It's all made up. It's blah, blah, blah. But the one thing about, there's bad journalists at every single publication, So you have to look and see who's actually writing the stuff. And Mark Irwin is not somebody that just like writes whatever. Like he usually has some sort of, you know, not inside track, but he usually has some sort of legitimacy in the writing that he does, even if it's not like 100%, if that makes sense. So I just want to read this out to you guys. Is that, the Sun reports, Mark Irwin, that Arsenal will make another move for Aston Villa midfielder Douglas Luiz in January. Mikel Arteta is becoming increasingly concerned about Thomas Partey's recurring fitness issues and would like a quality replacement to help the squad. This really just underpins what we already know to be true, and we it's not that far fetched that we would go in with a lower offer, which is what's being reported, than we did in the summer, something around 15 million to test the resolve of Aston Villa. Now, what I will say is that Aston Villa was smart, not to sell Douglas Luiz because a couple weeks later, not even, um, Boubacar Kamara got injured, longer term injury. So who knows, what will happen with that? Like if they'd be interested in moving him on in January to make sure that they get something. But they were right to do that because if they had sold him to us, they wouldn't have had anybody really to step in. That's a like for like replacement. So that was smart for them, even though they're shit. So um, yeah, they're saying that Thomas Partey's injury concerns are really starting to become something that they're looking at, and Arsenal are likely to offer way less. Um, Louise will have less than 6 months left of his contract remaining, and the key to this, and we know the key to this is the whole Douglas Luiz kinda worked with Arteta, and, he's also Brazilian, and he's Kia's client, and Kia's close to Edu, so all of these things work together for it to be a something that looks like it could be done, but it's all about Aston Villa and whether or not they'd be willing to part with him. I know that a lot of Arsenal fans are really sold on Danilo, which would be like a more longer term option, that could be good for the future. My only pushback on the Danilo thing is that this would be the type of signing that you're making to bolster the squad in the short term because you're trying to push for something. Arsenal can't miss out on top 4 again. Like that's in my opinion, we have to move on from Europa League nonsense, and we have to step into the next era of Arsenal as it stands. And so it can't slip through our fingers because Thomas Partey is injured and we're playing Sambi, in April. If you look at our April schedule, you don't want Sambi playing then, but Thomas Partey is going to go to the World Cup and who knows what type of condition he's going to be in when he gets back. And so I do think Arsenal would be very smart to bring in a midfielder that can step in that single six role that's played in the Premier League before, and if you could get it done for 15 million, it wouldn't be that bad. Now, does he help us in the long term? Is he somebody that's gonna blossom into, the next whatever? No, but what he is somebody that could definitely take over for El Neni. We will still need to, like, probably look for a long-term Thomas Partey replacement, but bringing in somebody in the short term like Douglas Luiz takes over for El Neni. El Neni, after this season, can leave, and then you have Douglas Luiz and Thomas Partey while you look for that next player to come around because I'm so like, when I look at it and Danilo is somebody that looking at him, he looked great. Like, he looked great, but he's in Brazil. Who knows what he's gonna be like in the Premier League. When you look at Thomas Partey and what he brings to Arsenal on the pitch, it's I don't see that player out there, and I don't really see that player out there in a 30, 40, 50 million price range. Like, these types of players are the likes of Tchouaméni. These players are very expensive, and you need to have Champions League to be able to even speak to them. So, in order for us to get to Champions League, we need to make sure that Thomas Partey's injuries don't kill us off. And so Arsenal are gonna have to replace El Neni anyway. My thought is Douglas Luiz is not a Thomas Partey replacement. He's a better version of El Neni. So if that's what Arsenal would want to do, I wouldn't be that upset by it because I don't want to be talking about Thomas Partey's injuries anymore. Not this season. It's just he's on the edges all the time. This guy warmed up for Ghana after playing 75 minutes, mind you, just 75 minutes after being injured and twisted his knee or something. And so he's just somebody that we're gonna have to manage differently. And if you could bring in somebody mid-season that alleviates a little bit that, I don't think it would be a big deal. I know he's not the ideal Douglas Luiz is not the ideal long-term, um, replacement for Thomas Partey or alternative to Thomas Partey, but he's better than El Neni, and we need to replace El Neni because he's got not gonna be in the squad, and he's definitely not gonna be here next season. He better not be. So, yeah, that's really where I'm at with it. I mean, 15,000,000 wouldn't be bad, but it's just a matter of would Aston Villa, knowing that Boubacar Kamara is gonna be out for a little bit, quite a bit of time, be willing to sanction, something like that. That's, kind of where I'm at with it, but this doesn't sound like something that would not come to fruition based on all of the people that are involved and the fact that Thomas Partey is our most important player and he's on the edges of injury at every moment. Let's see. Alistair Ben says, people who say Danilo is the one, have you actually watched him? Um, Oh, like, if people who say Danilo is the one, have you actually watched him? I mean, he's one I haven't really watched him, like, in beyond the odd, like, clips and stuff like that, and I thought he looked interesting, but at the same time, you don't know how that's gonna translate, you don't know if he might need to move to France first and then move to the Premier League. That's a big jump from Brazil from straight from Brazil to the Premier League at 22, so I'm not sure if that's the player that you wanna bring in January, where if Thomas Partey is out for 8 weeks, that's the player that you're gonna be playing. iGamer says, Jess, top four is a non-negotiable. We need to handle that Partey spot the way that we did with Tierney's. John P says, I can see us getting Luiz and Danilo, one in Jan and one in the summer. Danilo is rated by a big talent in Brazil, and they know number sixes. Um, Tuchukwu says, Douglas Luiz is the player out there. Um, he's definitely not somebody that's gonna get you off of your seat, especially if you've seen him play for Aston Villa. He's pretty just I mean, he's not a top player, but he's a good solid player, and he's better than Elneny, so he would up at least the floor of the team, and give you something where, like, if Thomas Partey were to be injured, you wouldn't be having a heart attack, and at this point, that's where we're at. Every single time he rolls an ankle, pulls up, sneezes, coughs, we're like, "What's wrong with you?" And that's we don't need that. We don't need that, not right now. Nashville says Partey replacement is gonna be expensive. That's a summer window priority. Well, okay, people are saying, Miedema scored, that's good. The thing about Partey replacement, it's not necessarily something that I feel like we have to do right this moment. If you bring in a Douglas Luiz, then you can subsidize Thomas Partey's minutes a little bit more and manage him better, than we have been, and then that's just what you have going on, in terms of on the pitch stuff, so and I just don't think those players come very often, like, we're looking at people are talking about Bellingham, I'm like, "We don't got Bellingham money," and I'm just looking at it, I'm like, "If you guys can name me somebody that Arsenal would buy," 'cause Arsenal are never Arsenal are not into buying £100,000,000 players, right? So, not Bellingham, but if you guys right now can name somebody in Europe, in the UK, in wherever that would be the perfect Thomas Partey replacement that could step in for him tomorrow, that we could get. Let me know who that player is and how much you think that they would cost because I'm really looking around in Europe and I don't see that player around. I really don't see them around. I'm not a scout, but I don't see them, and so I think we're better off maybe just underpinning the position and using Thomas Partey a little bit differently, a little bit less, and then waiting for that player to come around so we're not wasting money on somebody that doesn't have it, because don't come talking to me about Ruben Neves's and stuff like that. I don't think that's the player we're looking for. Blaze asked, Jess, do you think Arsenal will come back for Douglas Luiz after what happened in the last transfer window? Yeah, I do think that potentially they will. Kia's pushing it, he was pushing it, Edu was probably pushing it, and Arteta is not gonna want his season to be derailed once again because, um, Thomas Partey hasn't eaten his chicken and rice. It's I can see it happening, let's see. Alistair Ben says, "I think Luis has a lot more potential than you're just. Only reason he's not at City is because of his visa reasons. He has a high ceiling, I think. Doesn't help that he's at dead Villa, so maybe more could be brought out of him at a better club, but, I would just the player that I see right now, I would take to help underpin this team. So I don't think he's crap, but if you think he has a high ceiling, then fair enough. Mick says, I think the players are flagging slightly, very slight knocks, and they normally just play through because the insane schedule this season. Fair enough. Um, let's see what else are you guys saying. Caicedo. Okay, so yeah, let's see. I'm seeing your guys's options. Sangare or Ndidi. So the one thing I'll say about Sangare is I do think that he would be a viable option because he can play a little bit and he can do the defensive stuff. So yeah, Sangare maybe. Ndidi, hell no. That guy is injury prone as hell. If you don't like Thomas Partey, you damn sure aren't gonna like Ndidi. So yeah, Sangare yes, Ndidi no. Adiini says, we can rescue Frankie de Jong. Dare to dream, my friend. Dare to dream. That guy is desperate to stay at Barcelona. Um, let's see. Mugaga says Fofana, Caicedo, Onana, Sangare. Sangare, yes. Onana, no. Caicedo, yes. Fofana, I haven't seen enough of. Caicedo, oh, I'm so annoyed that Potter has went to Chelsea because it would really suck if he ended up there. He's like the perfect Conte replacement. 'Cause he can do box to box, he can do the sitting in role, but he can also play ball, you know? It's gonna be annoying if he goes there. It really, really is. But, and now Chelsea and Brighton have forged some sort of relationship, because they also worked out the whole thing with, what was the player that you guys are all obsessed with? Colwell. Um, so I fear that he may end up in Chelsea blue, but, he would be a good option for that position. Again, also Liverpool are really looking at Caicedo as well, so there might be a little bit of a war, for him, but iGamer is 100% correct. We need Champions League. That's gonna be the difference, and when you look at it too, like, the 2 teams that are most interested in Caicedo are probably Liverpool and Chelsea, but if we were able to pip one of them to that Champions League spot, we might be able to get a player like that, but without it, I just think it's a lost cause. Like, in order to get this next level of player, we need Champions League. Nashville Gunner says, Rice is the dream. No, no, I don't know what y'all see in him. I really don't know what you guys see in him. Like, I get it, but I don't. Like, I'm just not really that into Basmati. Like, I'm just not. I I don't know. I don't know what it is about Basmati, but he's not it for me. Um, Don One says Bellingham, but again, too expensive. He's not gonna come to us. So yeah, those are some good options. But again, like we're looking for players that can do the Thomas Partey thing, and that's really difficult to find because it's hard to find players that have such a well-rounded that they're so well-rounded. A lot of players that play in that deepest role are there, but also need to have other players around them that can do the passing and all that kind of stuff. So it can't just be anybody. And the players that are well-rounded usually cost in the £100 million range. So yeah, it's going to be tough. But I think bringing in somebody like Douglas Luiz could help, even though it's not something that a lot of Arsenal fans would be excited about. Because I get that he doesn't get you off your seat, but sometimes that's not what's needed. Sometimes that's not what's needed. Michael says Tonali, he's already renewed his contract with AC Milan, so he won't be going anywhere, to be honest. Ayanle says Bellingham and Rice. I don't know what people see in them. Um, I'm just not a I don't know. I just Basmati. I saw him try to do, like, a move, against no, who'd you guys play last? Maybe it was Germany. I saw him try to do a little helicopter move, and I was like, "You don't have that in your repertoire, sir." It was just, like, something about him, I just he's not my favorite. Um, John P says Locatelli is not doing too well. Nobody's really doing well in that Juventus team. They're crap right now, so, um, I don't think the way some of those players are playing now is indicative of their quality. I think they're being poorly managed and poorly coached by Allegri, so, Barella is like an 8, so I don't think he would be good for that position, but he's a quality player, very quality player. Yeah, so you guys, yeah, it's for me, like, the best ones that you guys have kinda put out there is Caicedo and maybe Sangare, Rice, if that's what you're into, if that's what you guys are about, then fair enough. But, they gotta be able to play a little bit of ball, and they have to be able to hold their own in the 6 by themselves. That's really the requirement, isn't it? Let's see. Diallo says Bellingham or Muzalia. Just answer, please. I put out this poll, after the England Germany game, and there's people that they're hurting their brains, doing the comparison. They're like, it's just so hard to compare because they don't play the same position. I didn't say compare who's better for what position. It's just who do you like more? What player do you connect with more? There are players all the time that we compare that don't play the exact same position, like um Mbappe and Holland. We compare them all the time, but we know that they don't play the same position and it's not that deep. But I would say I still probably prefer Bellingham, to Mazalia, but I think both players are have very high ceilings, even though they play different positions, like, but I think it's still Bellingham for me. I just feel like what I like about him is his personality. I think he takes responsibility. He does. He takes responsibility at a very young age. I like what he says. I like that he's kinda different and a little bit aggressive in terms of, saying things that people won't say, doing things that people won't do, and, yeah, I just think for somebody to be so young, like, he could do whatever he wants to do. I think he's gonna be and whatever he lacks in skills and silkiness and all that kinda stuff, he'll make up for in his attitude, and, that's what's good. But I think he's really, really, really talented. Um, um, let's see. Don one says, "Rice and partay sounds peak." I don't want it. I don't like it. Bruno G, don't even get me started, you guys know. I never really recovered. I never really recovered. Every time I watch Newcastle play, I'm just like, the only thing now is he's getting these little injuries, and I'm like, "Are you injury prone?" But I don't think he is. I just think he's adapting to a new league and stuff like that, and a lot of players are picking up little muscle injuries, but Bruno, that's the one that got away, as far as I'm concerned. Every time I watch him play, I'm like, "He coulda did it. He coulda did it," What was wrong with him? He only wanted 65 grand a week. It's not too bad. Um, let's see. I saw another question that you guys were I saw one more and I wanted to what about James Ward-Prowse? Not for me. Not for me. We were talking about the other day is like, I think it was like me and KJ and maybe Terry were talking about rules that you could change in football. Everybody asked that question. And, my suggestion was you have a group of players that are like free agents that nobody really wants, but maybe they have some skills or whatever, special skills, and you could almost like rent them for a certain amount of time. So, like every single team has an allotment of a certain amount of money that they can have, like, and maybe even, like, the lower level teams have, like, a little bit more money, and you can use it, and each player has, like, a price that you can pay for a certain amount of time. So let's say that I wanted to use James Ward-Prowse for, like, 2 games and only bring him in. I can bring him in whenever for free kicks, like, and that's all, or you could just pay for the free kicks and say, "I have Ward-Prowse for 3 free kicks," and I just keep him in my team until then. I know it's wild, but that's the only reason or the only way I'd want him in my team is because I'd only want him there for free kicks. But yeah, that's like Diego Costa. Like, you have no striker like last season. Could you imagine if we would have just been able to like look into like a cupboard of players and be like, okay, I'll take Diego Costa from now until the end of the window. Okay, we'd only have to pay like 20,000. Cool. We'll keep him for that amount of time. That's it. Just pay his wages or whatever. And we could have used him to the end of the window or the end of the season, and we might have gotten top 4. So, yeah. Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's made up. Like, I wouldn't really want that, but, like, just think about it. Like, if you could just pick through a couple of players and be like, "Okay, I only need them for, like, this amount of time." Exactly, just bully. So, yeah, that's the only reason why I'd want him, is for free kicks. So yeah. All right, you guys. It's just a short one today because obviously we're gonna be gearing up for the North London Derby on Friday. I'll also be doing the 12th man on the football terrace on Friday as well. So if you guys want to tune into that, and then after the game, I'll be with the terrace live and in color, hopefully talking about a win. I need it, guys. I cannot be here. Like, the pain that I suffered off of the back of that Man United loss, I never want to feel that again. And I was mad for at least 72 hours after, like, mad to the point where I wouldn't speak. Like, I was so angry, so, I'm a bad loser and I don't wanna feel that again, so we need to win. But yeah, I will talk to you guys on Friday when we do our full-on preview, okay? Talk to you guys later.